So this video was sparked by a few comments I got a couple of weeks ago when I posted a reel of me on Instagram taking my liver every day. I call them liver shots, but you guys tend to freak out when I show you guys how I swallow raw liver. Now, by no means do I say or believe that somebody needs to take raw liver. It's just the way that I choose to take it. But this sparked a conversation of, isn't the liver a filter? Isn't the liver full of toxins? And so I want to break down some liver myths today and also offer you guys something for free that I think you guys will really like. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Jessica Ash. I'm a functional nutritionist and just a general hormone nerd. And I really just love teaching you about your biology and physiology so you can connect those biological truths with actionable steps so you can really start to take leaps and bounds and change your quality of life. If you like what I talk about on my channel or on my Instagram, remember that I have my signature course, which is really the blueprint that teaches you how to balance your hormones and restore your metabolism using nutrition, and it's called Fully Nourished. I also have a mini course called Mend Your Cycle, which is kind of like a little taste of what you get in Fully Nourished. It's just a much smaller course. It's only 90 minutes and it just gives you 11 action steps so you can get started. But with that being said, let's start breaking down some myths that I hear all the time regarding the liver, and it just irks me, especially when you know the science behind the liver. It's this amazing organ that does so many things for you, and yet oftentimes people boil it down to this organ that needs to be detoxed, or we'll say it's a filter, and it's none of those things. So I want you to understand your liver because it's actually the cornerstone of your metabolism, and it's the cornerstone of your hormone health. And if your liver ain't happy, nobody happy. So we really want to make sure that we're supporting our liver, but I never will actually use the term detox your liver. You want to know why? Because your liver is constantly doing the work of detoxifying. It's not detoxifying itself, it's actually detoxifying, we'll use that word, the whole body. And it's really responsible for determining where most things in the body, including nutrients, blood sugar, and toxins, end up. It's what makes the decision. And so it's a really important organ, and it's way more important than people give it credit for. So the first myth that I think I've already said like 1,000 times in this video already is that the liver is not a filter. No, I like to think of it actually as more of a battery pack. Your liver is connected to the digestive tract via the hepatic vein. They sometimes also call it like the portal vein, I believe. And this gives it this unique advantage of picking up nutrients that have absorbed from the gut into the bloodstream very quickly. But it also can often pick up proteins that come from the gut, or toxins that come from the gut, or if you have intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut, meaning the cells of the gut are permeable, meaning there's things kind of moving through that shouldn't move through, the liver takes a hit as well. And then remember, if you have intestinal permeability, you also are often leaking bacterial toxins, which we also call endotoxins, from the gut into the bloodstream, which often is going to hit the liver the hardest. So the liver is definitely kind of the first line of defense for what's coming from the gut, both good nutrients, but also what's quote unquote bad. But rest assured, your liver is mighty prepared to handle all of that. The only thing is the liver is a kind of an energy generator. All of these chemical reactions that it has to do, which, meaning taking a toxin that is really actually very toxic for the body and breaking it down in multiple steps to make it actually water soluble so it can be removed as waste. You can think of it actually as a very energy intensive job, right? And that's not the only thing the liver does. The liver does like 500 things for the body. So, the liver requires a lot of energy. It also requires a lot of nutrients. I like to think of the currency of our body as nutrients, right? Minerals, fat-soluble vitamins, water-soluble vitamins. That's kind of the currency of our body. And our organs are really concentrated in that currency because our organs obviously are very important. Most of our organs we literally couldn't live without, and there's a reason for that. They do very important life-saving jobs for us. And so that's where a lot of our nutrients are going to be concentrated, right? In the organs. Nutrients are the currency of our body. Energy is how the body actually runs. It's the fuel. So we want to remember that the liver, being this large 3-pound organ just there doing 500 plus jobs for us, needs a lot of support. It doesn't just do those things while you're running off of thin air, right? I think a lot of us think like, oh, it's just a filter, it's just that like filter over there, but it's so much more. And I want you guys to start thinking of it as a battery pack. It stores those nutrients, it determines where nutrients get to go, it can manufacture us blood sugar, which we'll talk about in a second, and it also really helps keep blood sugar stable when we're fasting or when we're not eating. So we need to remember that the liver is not a filter. It breaks down those toxins in phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. It takes them from being, nasty chemicals to then being not so nasty chemicals, then to being completely water soluble chemicals, and then pushing them out of the liver via bile, right? And then putting that bile into the gallbladder to be concentrated. And then once we eat fat, that bile gets stimulated, and then we release that bile into the digestive tract to be carried out when we poop. So your liver is not a filter. It's so much more than that. And that leads us to our second misconception, which is your liver does not store toxins. What the heck? It does not store anything. Can you imagine if you stored all the toxins that you just were exposed to your whole life? You would be like I don't know, you would feel like garbage, first of all, but second of all, that would be horrible. And, there are places in the body where our body can hide toxins or hide things away, like our fat cells, when it doesn't have the energy or the nutrients to deal with things. But the body, as a rule, tries to get as much out as possible. Now, this is completely dependent on our digestive capacity, too, because like I just said, your liver is battery pack. It is a metabolic regulator. It is doing so much for us. And the last thing your liver needs for you is to be constipated, meaning if you're getting that bile out into the digestive tract, but you're not pooping or you're not having regular bowel movements, and that waste is just sitting there, then a lot of that waste can be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, and then boom, it's going to go back to the liver to have to, do work again. So, the liver does rely on other systems of the body. It doesn't work alone, but it is not a filter. It has way too many jobs to be a filter. And if it had to just store up all the toxins we are exposed to over a lifetime, we would be full of junk, just full of junk. The third myth is that your liver doesn't need support. So then I've seen the flip side. So the health and wellness, super holistic community will say oh, you need to detox your liver. You need to be doing a liver detox every couple of months. You need to be fasting. You need to be doing all this weird crap. And no. But then there's the other side, the completely opposite side that's your liver doesn't need to support. It's detoxifying all the time. And yes, it is. That is true. It is true that your liver is constantly detoxifying, but it's doing so much more than that. And it does need support. It does need to be given the right tools and resources. If you're not intaking the correct nutrients or providing it with the energy that it needs, your liver is not going to be functioning optimally. And this is a very important concept to understand for the keto people, because a lot of the keto and low carb community will just spew this weird half-truth that, oh, you don't need carbs because your body will make them. And I'm yes, your body can make carbs, but how you make carbs is through a process called gluconeogenesis, which requires the liver to turn protein that you've actually taken from your muscle tissue. So your body has to increase stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, catabolic hormones, and break down your own tissue, aka amino acids or protein, send it into the bloodstream, which goes to the liver, and then the liver can take those proteins and turn them into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. this is not its preferred job. It has other jobs it needs to be doing. It doesn't actually want to be making you sugar on top of everything else it's doing, but it will to keep you alive. So we have to remember that although we don't need to be doing liver detoxes, our liver does require a lot of tools and resources to function optimally, and it should be provided. Like, if you want a healthy functioning liver, you want to provide it with those tools and resources, which actually leads us to the fourth myth, which is that fasting helps your liver. This is craziness to me. I don't understand. I mean, I do understand the principle. If you've seen my IGTV or my YouTube video on intermittent fasting, I talk about how when people have really bad bacterial overgrowth, because their metabolism is trashed, mind you, they have really bad intestinal permeability oftentimes too, because being hypothyroid is going to lead to the cells being more permeable. They're going to leak a lot of bacterial toxin or endotoxin into the bloodstream. And of course, like we talked about just earlier, that's going to hit the liver the hardest, right? So endotoxin can be really toxic, and it can be really body burdening, I like to call it. It can really burden the body with a lot of issues. But, that's not the liver's fault, and that's not food's fault. It just so happens that when you eat food and you have metabolic issues and bacterial overgrowth, it's going to increase endotoxin. And so some people think that, intermittent fasting is going to result in better liver health. And in that sense, I guess, but in reality, your liver's still not functioning optimally because it doesn't have what it needs to function optimally. The liver needs to be full of glycogen, so full of glucose or sugar. Not sugar. It also needs a lot of amino acids to function, so you don't want to be, not hitting your protein. You want to be getting plenty of bioavailable animal protein regularly to support your liver. You also really want to be making sure that you're getting those fat-soluble vitamins, specifically like vitamin A or preformed retinol. And then, vitamin E can be helpful. B vitamins, so important. Choline, and then, of course, minerals. And so this is why I love eating liver, specifically beef liver, regularly. And I encourage fully nourished students to get it in some way, shape, or form, at least once a week. Because a liver of a healthy cow is going to be rich in the same nutrients that our liver needs. And it's a great source of replenishing these nutrients. But eating a really nutrient-dense diet overall is also a great way to support a healthy liver. And if you believe that fasting long-term supports your liver, you just don't quite understand the liver. So I will say that is a myth that I really would like to just bust, boom, get it out of here. And then the fifth thing that I want to remind you about your liver, or myth I want to bust, is that people like to say your liver acts alone. They like to really hyper focus in on the liver and say oh, you got to do this to your liver, and you got to do this to your liver, and you got to do this to your liver. And I'm like, your liver is actually if you zoom out, that's me zooming out. If you zoom out, your liver is a part of your digestive system overall, right? And your digestive system is really where you take in the outside world and you break it down and you assimilate it and you use what you need and you get rid of the rest in a very controlled burn type of fashion. And the liver is a part of this. The liver also plays a huge role in the metabolism. It really is kind of one of the cornerstones of the metabolism, but it doesn't act alone. It does do a lot of jobs. It's so important, but there are other things that impact the liver. And that's going to be the digestive tract, but also our hormones can really affect how the liver functions. And I see a lot of people hyper-focusing in on the gut and the liver, and they really forget that if your body's under stress, it's going to prioritize certain things that it wouldn't prioritize when it isn't under stress, and vice versa. And so there is a lot of power in really regulating our stress hormones and getting our thyroid function up and balancing our hormones and providing our body with the raw materials and nourishment it needs in supporting our digestive tract as a whole, including the liver. And so don't let somebody convince you that the two systems are separated, because they are not. And oftentimes, if you've tried everything in regards to digestion and liver health, which I've seen a lot of people do these very expensive kind of crazy fasts and supplement protocols and all this random weird stuff, and they really think that oh, I need to do that first before I focus on anything else. But oftentimes they're actually not seeing any results doing that. And that shows me that that's because it's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is actually way more hormonal and also on a more of a cellular level or a metabolic level. And so, if you guys are interested in some actual actionable steps for supporting the liver, I actually included my free liver detox guide below. I named it Liver Detox Guide because I knew that would be sexy to you guys. But you now know the importance of understanding that your liver is doing so much more than just detoxifying for you. And I actually give you some really actionable, practical tips, nothing crazy in that guide. I actually include the recipe for one of my favorite supports, which is called the Detox Lemonade. And I love that drink. It can be so supportive, especially if you really struggle in your luteal phase after ovulation, have PMS, those types of things. It can really help support the liver's ability to break down and metabolize hormones. So it's one of my favorites. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video.